I've got 7:02. Let's call the meeting to order for the green efforts on September 6, 2022. At this point, we will go to public comment. Do we have anybody on the?
Nope, no one from the public.
No, okay. All right, then we'll move on. Item C, presentations. We do not have any tonight. So we'll move on to item D, to approve the July 12th, 2022 special meeting minutes. Does someone want to make a motion?
I move to approve the July 12th, 2022 meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, first and second discussion.
The only comment I have is D1. It's, I believe that's saying I made the motion. As I chaired that meeting, I wouldn't have made the motion, but I couldn't tell you who did.
I thought it was you, but
And Jennifer seconded Garrett.
all right.
Put
I'll
a name in.
Yeah, I'll put a name in. It's only one other name it could be, so.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, and I'll abstain, so I wasn't at the meeting. All right, moving on to public education goals. So we're gonna give it a little bit because Sam said he was gonna be a little late, so we'll just hold the anti-idling until he's able to pop on. Going to the next discussion item. So discussion on black plastics. I know Stacy, you had copied me on an email, and I know you were looking for some information, but do you want to take us into that a little bit?
I just saw the article in the Hartford Courant about how black plastics are not allowed in the recycling bin anymore, and I thought maybe we should do some public education on it. I reached out to the recycle, I don't know, Patty, you know what the department acronym is?
Recycle CT.
Or DEP, whatever, but they said they didn't have any, I mean, they don't have a press release, they don't have anything to share to help towns spread this information, but said they would look into it. And I should have followed up right before this meeting, but I didn't, but I will.
Yeah, black plastic has been that it's been in, it's been out, it's been in, it's been out. It's impossible to keep track of it.
But if we can do some public education to let people know it's out right now, that would probably be good.
I think we could probably just put something on the website to start with, and then as we discuss it more, it would be nice to point to a source of you know where that decision is coming from. So I don't know if Stacy, if Garrett, if you want to try to maybe follow up with an email, just to see, or if you could find something that where that directive came from.
So
The
Johnny,
state should have an image available. Like they should be, whatever.
so what is allowed and what is not allowed, it's based on what's acceptable, and it's based on the facilities who are taking it. It's not, doesn't come from a regulation. It doesn't come from the state per se. It's pretty much done based on whether or not facilities are able to recycle the black plastic. So the best source for people is recyclect.com, because if you type it, that's the website. It takes you directly to a page that says, can I recycle it, with a box, and you can type in whatever it is you're looking to recycle, and it'll tell you if it's curbside acceptable, or if there's another way to recycle it, or if it should go into the trash. So I think from a public education perspective, it makes sense to both do the, remember, you can't recycle black plastic, or, you can't recycle black plastic, but also to provide information about this website. So that way, when people have their own items, they can find it.
So do we think that would be like a good item for the town newsletter? I don't know when the deadline is for the fall one. It's probably coming up, but maybe the winter newsletter or something like that. We can.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I mean, we've put it out there a couple of years ago when we had, I think we did what did we do, Stacy? Did we have a postcard that went out?
We did our own mailing when we were feeling like we had a lot of cash, but I think if we can get in on the fall deadline and just, I can write a small blurb or something with a link.
Yeah, they also apparently, I see now on the website, they have apps for both iPhone and Android that you can download as to whether or not something is recyclable. So,
Which 4 people will do, and 3 of them
Right.
are on this call.
yeah,
So I don't think, that, you know, Garrett, let's chat after the meeting a little bit about the newsletter, because it might not be a bad idea just to get even just a quick paragraph, like what we've been up to, and this could be part of it, like, did you know? And, you know, kind of frame it that way. So let's chat, sorry, let's chat a little bit offline and see, you know, what we can include in there, because there's other things on here that I think we can touch upon as well.
Right, maybe that ties into the anti-idling, and we can add something in the newsletter about that for the schools, especially now that school's in session. Include something about that, because we're gonna be putting up signs at the schools, so at least get the word out about that to other people.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think this is a good idea. I actually, a few months ago, I saw in one of my neighbors' recycling bins, like a really, like a plastic peanut butter jar in the recycle that still totally had peanut butter in it. And I was like, oh man, that's gonna ruin the whole, the whole truckload of recycling. So yeah, things like that would be good reminders, I think, for people more broadly.
Agreed. Okay. All right, perfect. And let's see what we could find, and we can, I'd like to check out that website as well. Like maybe get a link on our page, and then we'll take the newsletter to another discussion, and we'll follow up for the next meeting. Stacy, I'll start just a quick email chain with you and Garrett, if that's okay.
Great.
Perfect. Okay, moving on to item F, number 1, simple recycling update. Garrett?
I do not have an update for this meeting, just because it was so close to the end of the month. I'll have one for the October meeting.
Okay. And then discussion on composting. Garrett?
I think that would fall under Sam or Kate, because right now the holdup right now is they were looking to start the pilot program in the schools, but it was summertime, so Tara was not working. Obviously, teachers have the summer off, and I don't see Sam or Kate on, so that might postpone that to next month to get an update on the composting.
All right, if Sam happens to jump on before the end of the meeting here,
Yeah.
then we'll ask him then, and if not, we'll save it. All right, next item is discussion on littering signs. Talia, you had sent an email to Garrett about this. Do you want to take us through what you've seen?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So I think it was the last 2 summers, I want to say, it's just been very apparent to me that there's a lot of, garbage on the sides of the roads, especially the more like main roads. I live right off of Town Farm Road. So in particular, that's one that I travel all the time. And I've actually gone out a number of times with a number of kitchen trash bags in hand and like just picked up the garbage because it was an eyesore and I couldn't deal with it anymore. So that might just be a me thing. But with that, I was just wondering if there's an opportunity for us to consider placing any of those like littering fine signs, particularly on, towards the beginning of Town Farm Road. I don't know if that would have to be in conjunction with Avon. I think it's kind of split between the towns, but so that's really the proposal. It just, Farmington is a great town. And I think, kind of having the trash on the sides of the road doesn't represent us the way that we probably want to be represented. And so if there was any way that we could positively impact that, I just wanted to bring that to this group and see what we might be able to do.
Go ahead, Jenny.
So I was just to ask Garrett, I know when it comes to signage on main roads, that's a state thing, and on town roads, we have the jurisdiction, but do the fines actually come, we've seen those signs in the past, they almost get lost because they've been there for so long.
Yeah, so I did.
Littering on the side of the road, $500 or whatever. So is that a state or a town function? How does that get enforced?
So I did, so after Tally emailed me, I checked with Russ Arnold, the Public Works Director, and it comes down to enforcement of the rules by the police department or town ordinances. So if it's on a state road, if there's a state law against littering, they can enforce it, or a state police officer can enforce it, which I'm fairly certain there's one right in front of Hillstead Museum, if I remember correctly, right around the bend. So it just becomes an enforcement. How do we enforce it? Is there a relevant ordinance? I haven't looked at all the town ordinances yet to see if there's anything. So maybe that needs to be something that the committee addresses, is maybe creating or revising an ordinance to create a fine structure or something that allows the police department to enforce this violation and write a ticket. What I was going to ask, so if we're looking to put up town signs on Town Farm Road, it's a local road, that's most likely fine, but we have to want to be specific about where we would like them. So my question for Talia was going to be, is it more near the golf course or near the polo grounds? Because they might be related to the activity.
Right. So honestly, like, I'd say starting around the Tunxus Village entrance. I live in Tunxus Village, so there'll be like beer cans and vodka bottles, like giant. I don't know. I found really weird stuff, but anyway, so there's some stuff around there, and then even up towards Sub Edge, like in those wooded areas, like, people clearly just chuck stuff out of their windows,
Right.
in like the wooded area. So it's kind of both, to be totally honest there. I don't know if that helps or not, but
Well, it does a little bit. Just looking at, so obviously there's a parking lot here for Tunxus Country Club, right? That's the right side of the river, yeah. For Country Club, which they do host events, so it could be related to that. It could be people. It's an easily accessible parking lot. Maybe they're going there before going to the polo grounds, or it's people leaving the polo grounds, something like that. So maybe that would be a good idea, is kind of placing them near this parking lot and near the polo grounds, wherever the main entrance is. I think it's right here, or the Farmington Club entrance, and placing them there. And it's more of like a notice and a deterrent until there's an easy ordinance to cite that the police officer can enforce.
So there is an enforceable ordinance in Farmington. There are also studies that show putting up signs can make littering worse.
really, okay.
Yes. So I totally understand. I mean, nobody wants to see litter everywhere, but there's been some studies that show that when there is a sign there, people say, oh, look, they're going to be, I don't know, rebels.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would have thought,
yeah,
it might be a tough, it might be, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
And it's a violation regardless of whether the sign's posted. So I guess the other question is, do police have the staffing in order to enforce? Because that's,
Right.
I think, what it really boils down to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was going to say, is that, there might be a tough road with them as far as enforcement. Obviously, they've got a lot of things going on. That's surprising to hear that about the signs, because I was thinking about this more from an educational or just a reminder type of thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I guess we'll have to look into that a little bit more. I know, Talia, I see it, like, I'm on the entrance to the Highlands here by the Wooden Tap, and every month we're out there and we pick up about 9 nippers, and usually for every other piece of trash that we find. So no one's really carrying much, because they're usually chucking them out their car as they drive by, which is interesting. So we picked those up earlier in the day. But that being said, though, the cleanup day that, I got a chance to experience at least firsthand myself this year, and my daughter's been there for a few years, but might be a good place to kind of roll out an educational piece that comes with it. I know we do that already, but it's always nice to have new ideas and to kind of piggyback on that.
Yeah,
And
I
maybe
like
this-
that approach. Sorry, Stacy.
Maybe this committee considers doing a fall one, not the weighing and the prizes and the whole shebang, but maybe
Mhm.
there's a lower key. I mean, it's one of the most visible things, and if you believe in the broken window theory of Rudy Giuliani, that, you know, if town's clean, it's more likely to stay clean, and if the area's dirty, it's more likely to get dirtier.
Mhm.
I don't know if I just gave Giuliani too much.
So I'm
I
just
was
looking
gonna
at the,
agree.
I was just
Sorry.
gonna say, Stacy, real quick. So there is a hazardous waste collection day on October 15th. It's in Simsbury is the collection point as opposed to Farmington, but that's the next date of an event. It might be too soon to, or, you know, to get the word out for this year, but if you want to, you know, maybe, like you said, do a smaller one in the fall, and maybe just focus on a couple main roads in town and just say we're going to be cleaning up Town Farm Road, and I'm trying to think of another road, another one, you know, focus on one area at least and just assign points, and maybe that's how try and, you know, maintain certain areas as
From a,
opposed to doing the whole townwide event.
one thing to consider from a logistics perspective. I know Shannon's always said we do the town cleanup in April on the same day as the hazardous waste because the DPW folks are already working.
Right.
So just to keep in mind, I don't know how we coordinate the pickup, or is it just, you know, the idea of, hey, everyone, then take it back to your trash can and throw it out yourself too. Just
Could do that, could just coordinate with DPW to set up a single collection point. And then
Yeah,
either, you know, have only having one person work for that day, or I think that the 15th is probably a Saturday, but if you did it on a Sunday or something, then they can just pick it up Monday. It's not as big a deal if it's
Yeah.
sitting overnight.
Holly,
mean-
do you want to work with me on that?
Yeah, that sounds good. I was gonna suggest similar, you know, if we could have one in the fall before the snow kind of hits and sits on the on the trash all winter. So yeah, I think that would be great. Be happy to help.
And
Yes,
if we
Stacy.
can- Go ahead.
Sorry,
Jennifer.
I don't think hand raise functionality is working. Just real quick before we move on to the next one, Stacey, I'm happy to help too. The other thing I wanted to just mention is back to Johnny, your earlier comments around the educational opportunities. If we're going to be putting out other like content, I wonder if there's something more compelling than like you're going to get fined that we could say about, like, especially along the Farmington River, for example. What is the impact of throwing away trash? Like an infographic on how long different things take to erode over time, or I don't know, something that actually gives some meaning to the impact people have with their, I see those NIPS bottles all over the place too. Why? I don't understand. But just another kind of thread maybe to reinforce the point in the upcoming newsletter, if we're going to go that route for other things too.
Yeah, and I think also what we could do, if we could coordinate where there's one DPW guy and we have one single point, maybe, you know, we do, you know, anybody who drops off a bag, regardless of the amount, gets entered in a raffle. Maybe we have a couple of gift cards. Doesn't need to be expensive, but just a little something in a sweetener. Maybe it's $10 to Starbucks or something. And it's something that we can easily do. Maybe we, you know, have, you know, certain roads and someone sponsors that road and they get their own quick team together to do it. I think we can grow this a little bit just by kind of, you know, picking maybe the 5 or 6 major areas and, you know, coordinating one person to kind of sponsor that, or one business, whatever, or one group. And then you kind of do your own thing and then you drop it off at one spot, and, you know, maybe there's a few gift cards. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's more the point of it than anything.
yeah, I like the adoption idea. I know John Vibbert, I see his sign on the trail. He's got a section of the Farmington Trail that has his name on it. This section is maintained by John Vibbert. He might know more too about adoption for cleanup areas.
Okay.
Cool.
Great. All right. All right. We'll chat a little bit more. If you, Stacy and Talia, you want to get together a little bit and kind of chat about that, keep Garrett in the loop on that. And if there's anything else we could do, we'll talk about it at the next meeting. I know I just saw Sam jump on. How's it going, Sam?
Hello.
I wanted to, I know you popped on. We had skipped over the anti-idling. I don't know if you wanted to chime in on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it sits with the making of the signs made by the students, but the DEP signs I distributed to the schools. I don't have photos of the locations yet, but we indicated where we want them to all the head custodians, so they should be installing them, and I'll get photos out as soon as those are installed. And then, was there any update on the making of the signs?
No, Kate's not on, so I don't know if you had heard from her. 'Cause I know we were
Okay,
talking
no, I
about it.
hadn't heard anything. I know she reached out asking about the size of the signs. So I know they're selected. She knows the size of them, and she was working with somebody to get them made, but I haven't heard anything in a couple of weeks on that. I can follow up.
Okay.
I have a comment on anti-idling. I'm hearing that the Tungus pickup for crew, there's a lot of cars that sit there with their engines on while they're waiting for their kid. So I just want to toss it out there that maybe there's some other locations in town that might benefit from anti-idling signs. I had a parent specifically reach out to me telling me, aren't you working on something? Because I'm sitting here next to exhaust. So
The boathouse pay?
yeah, somewhere. I'm not a crew parent, so I don't know exactly where, but wherever the parents go to pick up their kids from crew, that's the location.
I can check with Shannon.
Okay.
I
She
can ask
definitely
my,
knows.
I'll ask my daughter. We don't pick her up though. She rides her bike back and forth, at least for now.
Yeah.
So I could find out more on that as well.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Moving on. So item G, EV charger.
Yep, so I met with a contractor for a charger company last week. I was kind of waiting for all the construction with the high school temporary parking lot to be done because that's about that area we were planning on installing the charger. So met with the consultant. We're gonna most likely end up installing, instead of using existing electrical circuit off the Staples house, which is what we had originally thought we would. We are going to pull a new service off of the pole that's right in front of the Staples house. And so we'll be able to install the charger as part of the grant. And then there will also be capacity to add additional chargers down the road if we want to, if more funds become available. So I'm just waiting on another meeting with him and their electrical contractor to just use it with these for quoting. So I can get a better idea of what it's going to cost. Just a reminder, there's a grant from Eversource. The grant covers 20%, or I'm sorry, up to $20,000 of the make-ready installation costs and equipment. And the only requirement is that the town cover the remaining balance and 50% of the charger. The charger is about $7,500. So we only have to pay half of that, and then the remaining balance for the construction. There are some ways to do cost savings, such as us doing the trenching and certain things, pouring our own concrete, things like that. But I think should be under 10 grand. They might be an increase of cost just because material prices change, like wire's expensive. So around a 400 amp service might be a little pricey for a wire. But that's the update for that.
Is it a level 2 charger?
Yes, so the level 2 chargers are paid for by the grant. The level 1 is just the 120 amp. 120 volt. I think it's still 40 amps, but it's only 120 volts as opposed to 240 volts. But then there is grant money for public level 3 chargers. But there's a $100,000 threshold. It's a lot more expensive because you got to install DC transformers and everything like that. So we're not going to do that. But it does cover the level 2 chargers at least. And so you can park at the library, plug your car in, go get some books, come to a town meeting if you want.
I already know one person who's very excited about this.
I had someone call me, maybe it was about a month ago, angry because we didn't have a charger in town.
Mhm.
a public charger. So, well, I have to go to Canton or Burlington to charge. I'm like, I'm working on it. It takes time, but so I am working on it. Like I said, I was holding off because of the high school, just because all that construction that was going on for the parking lot.
And
We
did,
should get a lot of credit for this, even though you're doing all the work. Like that, our
Yes.
committee should really promote
You're
it.
the one,
as-
your committee's the one paying for it. So
did you talk to Russ? And as far as the concrete and the trenching, I'm sure DPW would be happy to help with that.
yes, yeah. So when I met with the contractor, I met with the town's electrician, and even the contractor suggested that we could do, it's cost savings if we do our own trenching, and Russ is more than open to do that. He'd much prefer that we do our own work, especially on town property. So that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, any other questions on the EV charger? All
Exciting
right,
stuff.
what's that?
I just said that's exciting stuff. Thank you.
Sorry, I get the kids in the background on one side and I'm trying to battle it. I apologize. All right, next item is the discussion on native lawns. So
right.
Jared, if you want to kind of take us through the concept here, you've had some back and forth with a resident or two.
Yeah, so the background is I had received a complaint from someone on Birdseye Road that their neighbor wasn't mowing their lawn. We do have a town ordinance that states grass and vegetation must be kept below 1 foot unless it's for ornamental purposes. So I sent the letter, the guy mowed his lawn, and then he called me and said that he was actually intending to just let the lawn grow natively. He didn't want to cut it, but he understood why he had to. And he's told me they was planning on planting native wildflowers next year in his yard. And the house is really far set back. So his front yard is not really usable, especially it's on Birdseye. Long story short, there is, we adopted a regulation for lawns because we did, wanted a way to enforce people not mowing their lawns. With the, I want to say tides changing of that, there's a lot more interest in not having a monocultural green lawn, especially in your front yard, which is really ornamental. You don't use your front lawn as much as your backyard. So really thinking about maybe the commission would like to work on a ordinance update that essentially states that if you specify to us that you are doing this purposely, you're not just letting your lawn grow for no reason, and having some standards of you have to maintain a certain buffer around your property so that way it's not overflowing onto your neighbor's yard, not overflowing into the road. I think maybe 3 to 6 feet maybe along the road, and you can be a little shorter on the side. So I was curious as to if the committee would like to work on that with me, because it would most likely be the committee and Johnny that presents it to the town council to amend the ordinance.
I would be more than happy as someone who has my own backyard filled with native flowers. I'll
There you go.
say that I was on the council when that ordinance was voted. And it was very clear to me that ornamental was very broadly defined, or the intent was to keep it very broad, so that if someone was intentionally growing something, it was ornamental. And I know that I honestly can't remember what a prior version of it was, but there was more language in the earlier version that we took out of it in order to allow for more native plantings. So, but I'd be more than happy to work on that. I know I've talked with Kate about pollinator pathways and similar, and I think there's a really good nexus between natural lawn or native garden, however you want to phrase it, native plantings and pollinator pathways. And I think that would be a good thing for the committee to focus on, especially because at the end of the day, this is something that's about encouraging people to do stuff, but it's not an outlay of money for the town to push it.
Right. And it could just be as simple as we just have a registration form with our office is the one that enforces this ordinance to begin with. So just having, maybe an annual form, we can put in filing a form with the Public Works Department, and you just fill out a form annually saying my intention is to grow a native drought tolerant whatever lawn, we can figure out the wording later when we start working on this. But, I think given that winter is upcoming, it's a good winter project because no one's doing anything with their lawns over the winter. And kind of updating it. So I pulled up the existing regulation really quickly, and it says grass, weeds, and or vegetation shall comply with the following standards. No owner or occupant of any premises shall permit grass, weeds, or vegetation to grow to a height greater than 1 foot on any premise with a building or a dwelling throughout the property line and up to the curb line, unless such weeds or similar vegetation is planted as a crop to be harvested or for ornamental purposes. There's no definition of ornamental purposes. When I spoke to this property owner, he said, well, I was doing it for ornamental purposes, but I understand where you're coming from. And I said, that's a good, and I said to him, I agreed with him. It was a good point that there's not really a definition of.
And it was
ornamental.
it was intentionally left broad. The primary reason for it at the time were, Kathy Blonsky explained it to the council that there were a couple of properties that really were blight properties, and there was nothing that allowed them to find folks who weren't paying attention to, who really were it wasn't, you can even arguably say it was ornamental. So the reason it was, I think it's even unless such weeds are there for ornamental, was essentially the idea that weeds are only weeds if you don't want them there. So
the other related thing that might be interesting to think about, we discussed doing some public education thing. This isn't, I don't know how many meetings ago, maybe even a year ago at this point, similar to the recycling, the recycling that was like super well attended. And Patty, I'd love to hear what you did, because this was something I wanted to do for my lawn, and I just noticed so much more interest and I would say energy, to Garrett's point, this year on social media around this being more of a movement. So I don't know, maybe for spring or something, it might be interesting to see if there's somebody local who knows about this more broadly. And if so, would there be energy to talk about that at the library or something?
So there was the owner of Nature Works, which is a native, they're not 100% native, but mostly native organic nursery located in North Branford. She came and spoke at the Farmington Land Trust's annual meeting this year. I have no idea if she has a speaking fee or if she just does this to try to drum up business for her own business. But she was fantastic. And it was, I think she inspired a lot of people and actually opened a lot of eyes for stuff. And from my own personal perspective, I think it's baby steps. You do it a little bit at a time. It's a lot easier. I have not converted my entire backyard, just portions. I'm working on it. We'll get there. But I think there is a lot of interest in town about this. I've seen, like you said, Jennifer, I've also seen a lot more on social media, and there's even people making signs now that you put on a stake that says, pollinator garden in progress, please excuse the mess.
There's one near my house, actually. Maybe I think on Aqueduct, actually. Please don't mow, this is for the bees, or something to that effect. The Current did a whole article because it was creating frictions in Hartford, from a town perspective too. So if there's a way that we could help share good practices too, it feels like a win-win.
Right.
I have not a green thumb, so if I try this, it's not going to go as well as if I listen to an expert first.
Oh, I don't have a green thumb. That's why I buy the stuff that you can't kill. And actually, most of the native stuff is a lot harder to kill.
Yeah.
Right. So that being that we had really low rain this summer, that a lot of people's lawns just turned yellow because there's no water. They're high water. A lot of people have sprinklers, but that's a different story. But a lot of people's lawns turned yellow because they couldn't handle a hot, dry Connecticut summer as that some more native plants would be able to handle.
Some could, some.
Some.
Yeah, it was dry. I had even wheat, like pokeweed, which thrives everywhere, which I have in the backwoods because birds really like it, but I think I don't care for it, but birds like it. Yeah, that stuff shriveled up to nothing, and that usually survives everything. So, but yeah, I'd be really happy to work on this. I know I think it's something that we can do. And I think it's a way for people to just, I think, to have their own little small part. And it really does make a difference. Because the whole concept of pollinator pathway is that it's all well and good if a butterfly can get to your backyard, but what happens if there's nothing that connects to something else? So that way they can follow their migration patterns.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I like the educational piece just because, I'm coming at it from a different standpoint. I mentioned that we were going to be talking about this to one of my neighbors, and he had a neighbor directly adjacent to him that just let the grass get to about 3 feet tall. And it became a contention point, like it added friction between neighbors because I think he was doing it just because he didn't want to mow his lawn. I don't think it was along this lines. So whatever we come up with, I think we just need to be clear on what that is. And if there's a resource or something that can be, pointed to as this is, the proper way to do it in Connecticut, because obviously I've been reading and hearing a lot of stuff about California going through their drought issues right now and people installing turf versus lawns, or obviously the rock lawns like in the the Vegas area and that area that's been around for a while. But the turf thing is kind of something new, and obviously so people are thinking about this everywhere. And it's got to be a little bit more unique to New England, and kind of fit what we have. So
I agree, Johnny. That's like, I don't even know what a native grass is, like just speaking from personal experience. So like the neighbor might have just thought, well, this is how you do it. And that's not how you do it. But if you can give them something better that's going to look more attractive, that isn't whatever a pokeweed is, like, for example, I think tools go a long way. So anyway, I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so again, as the person that has to enforce these ordinances to begin with, I'm not going to want to shoot myself in the foot by just making a broad regulation. So it will be specific. There will be some sort of monitoring or something like that, or just a registration with my office saying that this is your intention. And if it goes fine for a few years with that process, maybe we no longer require the registration or something like that. But it could be something that we look at if we proceed with this, adopt a new ordinance, we take a look at it again in a couple of years and see if it's working or not, and then go from there.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. I know Sam is still on. Did you want to touch base on the composting stuff, or did you want to save that for next meeting when Kate is here?
To be honest with you, yeah, that would be good to wait for her, but also for me to touch base with Tara Vasquez before as well. I have not had a chance to talk to her about that, and I know she was interested to incorporate that into the curriculum this year. So,
Okay. Perfect. All right. Before we adjourn, is there anything else anybody wants to add? All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.